008. Yes, with stories for you.
Lost in these uneducated blues. I just want to love you all I can.
Hi there, Michael Mobbs is my name, and you are watching 2008. Here is the lovely Amy. I'm going to shut up and ask Amy to tell us who she is and where she is in Chippendale, not the street address, but just give an introduction. Amy, who are you and what do you where are you in Chippendale?
Thanks, Michael. Well, at the moment, I'm in the Knox Bar in Chippendale, which is highly exciting because I haven't been allowed in here for, it feels like years now. I'm normally, though, in Myrtle Street, which is a lovely street just around the corner.
Yep.
And I've been there for what feels like decades now because of the pandemic, but it's actually only been just under 2 years, over 18 months, so since December 2019. And I moved in there from a short stint in Enmore.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, there's no right or wrong answer, but why did you come to Chippendale?
Well, I'm a renter, so it was what was available at the time, in all honesty. But why I was looking at Chippendale, and I think why I typed in Chippendale, is that I've kind of transited through Chippendale for a lot of my life. I went to Sydney Uni as a student, and then I worked at Sydney Uni and I've worked at UTS. So I've spent a lot of time kind of trekking through Chippendale and noticing nice footpaths and nice garden beds, and actually dragging screaming children to childcare in Chippendale actually for a lot of my life as well.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Which one?
Blackfriars.
Oh, cool.
So I was quite lucky in that all three of my kids got to go to the same childcare centre.
Cool.
Not all at the same time, but I was very fortunate to get them into that UTS centre. And that was my first introduction really to Chippendale. And that was a long time ago. So like I said, I moved here as a renter just under 2 years ago. I wish I'd moved in 25 years ago. It would have made the childcare drop-off so much easier. But hey, if I had have done that, then I probably wouldn't be here now. So here I am.
So I'm interested in what you like about Chippendale.
I've actually been so surprised at how lovely and quiet and green it is. So I lived in Ultimo for a long time, and it's also surprisingly quiet. Or at least some pockets of it are. And the one that I found myself in around Marianne Street was actually surprisingly quiet during the week, and also had a really good little sense of community in that little block. And I actually didn't think I'd find that again. I didn't think that, I thought that kind of a pocket in the inner city is a rarity. But I've found actually since moving back into this area in Chippendale that it's not just Ultimo that has little community pockets. It's actually Chippendale as well. And actually Chippendale is a lot greener, so it doesn't have the overpasses of Ultimo, which is lovely. And it is so central, which is probably the other reason that actually attracted me to moving into the area. The fact that you can get anywhere from Chippendale. You know, we walk to Central Station. I was walking to work. When I moved in, I was working at UTS. So it's a lovely short walk to UTS. And I'm not a morning person, so that's very helpful. I can see my old offices from my backyard, which gets a bit sad now during a pandemic, and since I've left UTS. But it's you can't beat the location.
I have a theory. The reason Chippendale surprises everyone, I think, with its quietness is that it's a bit like a castle where we're surrounded by 4 rivers of steel, possibly Australia's busiest roads. But the buildings on those roads are big and high, and they act as a castle wall, and they bounce the noise away. so that even
Okay.
before the
Yeah.
virus, you could have the sound of traffic, maybe, but actually, you could, at night you could just not hear it, and it's. I think that's why it's so quiet. But the key thing for me at this moment in my life is this: the answer to this question: what don't you like about Chippendale?
Right now,
Yeah.
riot police. Get the bloody riot police out of the suburb. I don't want to hear another bloody helicopter. I don't want to see truncheons walking down my street. As much as I like horses, I don't need to see police horses on my way to get a coffee. Completely unnecessary, complete overkill. Thank you, Gladys. That is my main beef at the moment. I really feel for the people of southwestern Sydney that have been in harder lockdown.
Yeah.
The inhumanity of the way we've treated some of our citizens, I hope that it's unforgivable to the electorate.
Yeah.
I mean,
I have to say,
it really tenses me up.
I was on my knees gardening with a gardening tool, and this during one of the riot days. Somebody in a police car screamed past, then screamed to a stop, and came over to me and said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm gardening." And he went, "Gardening."
Mugging the footpath, Michael. You're mugging the footpath.
If I was to be a millionaire from harvesting testosterone, because they're mostly men, and could have harvested all the testosterone in the streets during some of these law enforcement days, I'd be a billionaire. But anyway, what would you like to see, given that we're going to have a council election in December this year? What's a couple of things, or just one, that you would like to see put to all the candidates about what you'd like to see change here?
I think it's probably time for a bit of renewal. Because as difficult as change can be, I think we need change every so often to kind of kick us out of our comfort zones into a better place.
Yeah, we need a virus.
And
hang on, we've got that.
We've got that.
When you say
I think
change,
it's kicked us enough,
do you
that
mean
one.
high rise or low rise, or what do you mean by change?
I think the council might need a bit of a shake-up.
Oh, right.
Because I kind of feel like I love the city of Sydney. And its current council has done some great things. The current council's been there for a long time. And as much as I think they are all very well intentioned, and I love having independence, can I just say I love having that Sydney has a strong independent council. People
who can put a noun, a verb and a full stop in the one sentence. Quite unusual in Australian politics. We've got a few of those. But I interrupt.
No, yeah, but I do feel like that we've had a bit of comfort creep, or something's happened and it's just not feeling as fun or as good a place to be living as it used to in the city of Sydney. And I know that there's a lot of things working against council for the city. I know that we have quite a hostile state government when it comes to City of Sydney. But I think at some point you need to accept that things aren't working as good as they could, and maybe, as difficult as it might be, a change of guard might be necessary. And I don't say that lightly.
I understand.
Because I've considered myself Team Clover for a long time. I've considered myself quite green and independent. But I kind of feel like at the moment it's been really hard to live in Sydney the last few years. And harder. It's felt harder than it used to. So I would like to see some positive change when it comes to council and the city.
Amy, one thing stood out for me in what you just said. You used the phrase comfort creep. Now, I don't want you to name names, but you work, or you have a role in financial matters.
Yeah.
And in particular in the superannuation industry. I don't want you to talk about anything in particular.
Sure.
But is there comfort creep generally in the superannuation industry in Australia? Since the law was changed and you got a tax deduction for putting your money
Yeah.
as an employee or employer into superannuation. We have one of the biggest superannuation industries in the world, and I'm really interested in whether it's where it's going and what your sense of the industry generally is.
Look, that's a really good but difficult question.
Good. So,
So,
well, I'll order a 3-course meal and I'll allow you to answer
look,
the
I
call.
think that there's been comfort creep across a lot of Australia, potentially, and it's not just in the superannuation sphere, but I think what I'm kind of getting at with comfort creep is the ability for us all to kind of forget about, I guess, the difficulties that we might have overcome to get to a certain level of comfort or living standard, and forget about the fact that so many of our fellow citizens are continuing to struggle once we've kind of moved a little bit beyond that struggle. So I'm guessing that comes from me in a sense of, like I mentioned, I'm a renter.
Mm-hmm.
And I've noticed that I've kind of reached a little bit of a level of financial comfort in the last couple of years that I'm really enjoying and I'm tremendously grateful for. But I guess I'm aware of how easy it is for me to forget what I used to find acutely difficult, and that comes down to, like, I can go to the supermarket now and I don't think about what the kids are throwing in the trolley. I just kind of go, get that, get this. I just throw in what I want. And I realised recently that I've forgotten that not so long ago, when I was going to the damn supermarket, I was mentally counting up everything that was going into the trolley, and I was probably getting the kids to take things out because finances weren't as good as they are for me now. And I think that when it comes to superannuation, we might have that kind of happening on a larger scale as well. More people are benefiting, which is a good thing, which is what we want. But it's easy to leave people behind. You mentioned I'm involved with a superannuation fund. It's an industry super fund. So the industry super funds have been doing phenomenally well for their members, and we want that to continue. The government, however, kind of is now legislating superannuation to such an extent that we're seeing a lot of mergers and acquisitions in the superannuation realm. And my fear is that some people might be left behind in that because you're dealing with really big financial companies. It's difficult to maintain, I guess, a level of service to individuals once companies, and any company kind of reaches a certain size.
Yeah.
You know, it's very different shopping at Coles or the local supermarket to what it would have been for my grandparents shopping at a local store.
I hear you.
And in going for the convenience of supermarkets, we've actually accepted, consciously or not, the death of the local store, right? So I was actually hearing, it's interesting, during the week that there's a return to high streets and the notion of kind of shopping local because we've all been in lockdown and we've been forced to stay largely within certain bubbles and zones. And I actually thought, gee, that's great. Like that could be, we actually have the opportunity for going back to something, a level of community, I guess, that we've kind of allowed to disappear. And I guess that's also the notion of comfort creep. Like we've kind of gone along chasing something without acknowledging or realising what we've lost and kind of going for that shiny thing.
So
I'm not sure if that answers your question.
So this is really interesting. And it may be that the questions are new and there's no need to rush into an answer, but it's an important thing, I think. Is one of the reasons there's comfort creep because superannuation is mandatory, there's a guaranteed river of income of gold for these companies, so it's a good place to invest. Is that one of the reasons it's created that level of...
I don't know that would be it. I think that, and it might be outside my area of expertise to fully answer that one, actually. I don't... that's not resonating with me as much, actually.
So the second question is, do you put this issue in your discussions in your superannuation persona, not just within your particular area, but generally? Do you agitate about there being a role for superannuation for people who are doing it tough? Can you
look? I think that it's always there, front and centre in my mind.
Yeah.
As a board member or as a director, I'm very much confined to fixed responsibilities to the company and the board. However, like I said, it's an industry super fund, and I'm very lucky not just to be on the board, because it's such a fabulous company, but also that the company has a board that actually does truly always have its members' best interest front and centre. And that's not just it goes actually a little bit beyond the legal financial best interest test. It is actually a very, I guess, sympathetic board and a very caring board. So, and I am aware, though, that might not always come across in company literature.
What I'm going to do is leave you hanging there on that difficult issue.
On that ledge, yeah.
So we've been from where you came here and why to where you are now in this financial world. I hope that Chippendale nurtures your journey in the financial world, and I hope to keep receiving donations of food and your company in the streets of Chippendale. It's lovely to have you here as a resident.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for coming here, and stay.
I'm trying. I'm trying.
Thank you, Amy.
Thanks,
Cheers.
Michael.
Okay. Welcome to 2008, where we tell stories from Chippendale. Here we have one of the Chippendale folk. What is your good name, sir?
My name's Ben Cavallero.
Hey, Ben, welcome.
Thank you.
So, no one dies here, so just relax.
Okay.
I think you live next to me, don't you?
I am your neighbour for the last 12 months.
Okay. And where did you come from?
I was living in Ashfield, where I grew up.
Right. Is this your first share house?
It's not the first share house.
Okay.
Because I was living in the family home and they moved out and I lived with other housemates over the years. But this is the first non-family share house.
I'm going to go to your neighbours and say, has Ben asked you to move out yet?
Yeah,
Look what he did to his parents.
Well, the neighbours next on our side, not you, have moved out, so maybe there's been some connection to them leaving. So
what made you choose that house and this place of Chippendale, 2008?
Well, it was probably the best and last option of all the places that I checked out, because I checked out some horror shows in the month before I had to move out, and it seemed like the best and nicest option of the lot, but it's actually turned out to be an amazing place to live.
I'm not good at this, but I think I counted 5 people in that house.
There's currently 5 people, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my house is just me and the 2 chooks. I'm guessing you're having a better time because there's 5 people in that house during our virus?
We do all of us reflect on how lucky we are to have the five of us all on a rotating sort of social roster to keep some sanity, I suppose, during these days.
You've got a roster.
Well, what I mean is that like someone might not be home, or someone will be gone, or we'll all be home at night. Sort of, yeah. Around the clock, there'll always be someone there, which is, yeah, I think possibly being taken for granted by myself when I listen to stories of other people who, you know, are doing it tough at the moment.
Well, I can tell you it's tough for me, even with the chooks. What do you like about Chippendale?
Well, I suppose it kind of reminds me of living in the suburbs, but it's also the super convenience of living close to everything that's, you know, good. The restaurants, the pubs, which, you know, when the world goes back to normal, will be refreshing to revisit. The greenery, I suppose, the fact that there's, you know, public sort of gardens and projects that people like yourself are working on, which is quite refreshing. Aesthetically, it's very nice, of course.
What do you mean by that? What do you like to see or look at?
It's nice to know that there's the public. Well, so what I mean by the public gardens, the what's it called? The down the road, the new greenery patch that I saw the other day that someone's like put effort and time to care for. That's going to be like very nice to look at come summer. Even there's just trees a lot of the all over the place. Like I think we kind of take it for granted in a lot of Australian cities that there are trees in a lot of places, where in a lot of parts of the world they don't have that, and that I think is unappreciated by some.
And what don't you like?
It gets rather dusty in our house. I think it gets very dusty from just being close to main roads.
Yeah.
I mean, other than that, the things that I don't like are things that I'd have to move away. The fact that it's not near a beach, and that's not the neighbourhood's fault. It's not the neighbourhood's fault that I don't have a garage. So these are very, very trivial things. Other than that,
And what do you do to put bread on the table other than slicing up a loaf?
that our resident baker from time to time makes.
Yeah.
Currently, I'm working part-time in logistics for a bookstore in the city.
In a bookstore?
Yeah.
How does a bookstore get involved in logistics?
Well, it's really just the people that work out the back receiving the books that arrive. It's a Japanese company that runs the bookshop, so it's the only store in Australia of that company.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
And I've never thought about that. Let's take a peek out the back of the shop. What would it involve for you when you go to that bookstore?
As a working person there?
Yeah.
I'll make this as interesting as I can. It involves me walking through the warehouse area. I'm saying that in inverted commas, which is also shared office space. I have my coffee, and then I go back to our warehouse area, and I sit with my trolley and a bunch of boxes and scan and sort through and categorize them to their respective genres.
So does that mean it's you who chooses where they go on the shelves?
Oh, gosh, no. That's the second highest person in the shop that decides the layout of the land.
So you would choose, for example, whether it's crime or sex or travel or diaries?
Fortunately, some wizard has already sorted that, and that is done before I've had to do anything.
Do you have a title come in and you think, I don't know whether that's sex or crime?
Actually, the other day, I did have to do a bit of that because I won't bore you with the details, but I had to choose whether or not, okay, is this just Australian literature or is this crime fiction? Australian literature, close enough.
Right. And what did the second in charge, was she say anything about that decision?
She's on a phone call, and she's a bit of a pain in the ass, so I'd rather not talk to her most of the time.
Right. So we are ringed by 4 of Australia's busiest roads. We've got a big park on the other side of one of them. What do you do for exercise?
Around the side of the house, I've got my little outdoor gym where I've got my,
Gosh.
Yeah. So
We should talk more often. I'm finding out so much about
yeah. Well, if you ever
next
want
door.
to, if you ever want to lift some weights, there's a whole set of things to be done there.
Right.
So I have my little routine that I do there from time to time. I haven't done it for the last 3 weeks, so I have to start again to start getting the endorphins. But I'll try and do that little routine. Then I'll go for a run. I have at least 4 to 5 routes that I'll take.
Yeah.
But before the lockdown, I was venturing up to the park, to Victoria Park, and sunbathing to the joy of my skin.
I'm getting a bit protective of you here. Are you, because you're right beside the next door neighbour's house, do you...
Grunting.
What happens there when you're straining away? Do people say, can we help you?
I've not yet had any heckles or gawks yet. Thankfully, it's very closed off, and the neighbours who were there and no longer there seemed to have nothing to do with looking outside their windows, as far as I'm aware.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Gosh, you never know what's going on the other side of the fence.
The private lives of our friends and fellows are mysteries to everyone but themselves.
One of Chippendale's long-time residents and a great friend who used to babysit young kids was David Malouf.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he said, you never know what's going on behind closed doors. And it's true, isn't it?
It gets more true the older I get. You really never know what is going on inside someone's home, inside someone's head.
Yeah.
Because if you don't sit next to someone for 24 hours, they could be doing anything, or they could be thinking anything.
Well, gosh, getting here, not even I knew what was going inside my own head about all the times I gave you. It's a miracle you've got here.
Well,
do you buy the food and you keep it separate from the other 4 people? And how does that work?
Yeah, so we do sort of shop separately. We were sharing the built-in food shelf for a while, and it got too crowded. So I, using my scavenger and internet powers, managed to find those, I suppose they're called the IKEA Kallax cubed shelving, and threw that on top of my fridge and put another one on the
you've got
side.
your own fridge?
I've got my own fridge. We have 2 fridges.
Are there 5 fridges?
Yes. Well, I have one little mini fridge in my room, which I've turned off, and then there's one fridge for 2 of us and one fridge for the other 3.
Fridges can use 10 or 15% of the energy in a house.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any dispute over the electricity bill about, you've got 2 fridges, or does it get down to that level of particularity?
I've turned off the little fridge for the time being, since I've not got any booze to keep in it. But none of us have brought up an issue of any, queries with bills so far.
I mean, it's another world since I last shared a house. So forgive my curiosity about these.
Not at all.
These small things, but the small things can matter, can't they?
They really add up.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's the smaller things that matter more than the bigger things.
Isn't that true?
One of the other roommates the other day got a drum kit, an electronic drum kit, so he's not banging away brass all the time, but we do hear a thudding quite a bit. I don't know if you've been hearing it lately.
No.
That's good.
What is a small thing that irritates you living in a household of 5 people?
This is going to sound very trivial, but someone, I don't know who, leaves half-drunk glasses of water all over the kitchen very frequently, and I often think to myself, is it so hard to take it with you or finish the glass? Or
Has anybody mentioned to you any small things that you do?
No, I hope not. I hope they don't say a thing.
That guy, he's always emptying his water,
I hope they don't say anything about me to do with me lounging around or leaving my things about. So I've seen you getting on and off your bike. Mm-hmm.
Do you ride that into work?
I do ride into work. It takes me approximately 11 minutes.
Into the city?
Mm-hmm. just the town hall.
Is it dangerous?
No, not if you're skilled.
Right.
And especially when there's little or no traffic
Yeah.
currently.
And tell me what you're studying.
Currently studying a Bachelor of Security Studies at Macquarie online.
What, security studies?
Security Studies.
Is that about locks?
That's what a lot of people are saying. Is it about being a security guard? No, it's kind of like, it's very similar to international relations, which I originally wanted to do, but there was more openings for this particular course.
Right.
So it's all to do with how countries relate to one another and how they try and advance their security positions.
Well, that sounds like a great course for living in a house of 5 people. We'll get you back if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
But this is fantastic to talk to you and find out what's happening on the other side of the fence. And good luck with the glasses of water.
Thanks. I'll get to the bottom of it.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Michael.
Good.
That was wonderful.
Steph, here you are on 2008. The naked village, as I think of it sometimes, where people come in and tell their stories, like a really old television show where the stories of New York were told. But this little village, of which you're a key part, is a cafe, means a lot to all of us, not just you, but to all of us. And
Thank you.
I'd just like you to share with us, if you will, some of the difficulties you have dealing with there being no business, but, outgoings and landlords and tax and so on. Can you explain some of the mechanics of running a business and how it works in terms of cash flow and so on, without sending us to sleep? Is that okay?
Yeah. Well, the mechanics of running a business are like the mechanics of running a household on a slightly grander scale. There's a budget, so you have on one side is the income, and the other side is the outgoings, the costs of living and costs of running a business. And so the simple version of that is that our income was padlocked, and nobody could spend money in our business, but our outgoings remained in place. So we still had to pay rent, we still had to pay utilities and tax and all of that sort of stuff. So you've got a gateway of hemorrhaging money, and an inlet that is blocked. So it's none of it makes sense in a business.
No. And it's not just your business. It's, there are cafes that are closed, and cafes that closed before or during the virus. And, there are padlocks on the doors. Can you describe for me in a way that I can keep up with, because money isn't my strength, how does the federal and state support or not support or make it difficult for you to get the money they offer? Like, I understand you have to... can you explain to me the cash flows?
In this particular lockdown, which is the second one in Sydney, they created an assistance package called JobSaver, which is 40%. Effectively, it's 40% of the payroll. So if my payroll was $1, they would give me 40 cents.
Okay, good. I'm keeping up.
Okay. Now, to get that, they made it difficult enough that I had to employ an accountant and bookkeeper. So
you had to?
In order to do the correct paperwork. And
so you had to pay?
Yeah, and that took a fair chunk. of that money to get, because there were hooks and catches. You couldn't just apply for it. You couldn't just say, I'm this business, I've been here this long, and
You had to pay somebody to do the figures for you.
yeah, because you also had to bring up all your past stuff up to date. They hooked it into a whole bunch of other things. So we had to even correct the 2001 tax return.
2001.
2001, because they wouldn't clear the payment because there was a discrepancy on the 2001 tax return. And as it turns out, I happened to be overseas at the time and not employed and hadn't lodged the paperwork because I was away for a few years.
They went back. Okay.
So that's the sort of thing they're doing. And
This is the federal government.
it's a federal-state partnership in this instance. And it's administered by the state government, the paperwork side of it. The previous one, which was JobKeeper, was done by the state government and could only be done through accountants. You had no chance of doing it any other way. It was a slightly better package in that it paid more money, but in both cases they require you to pay the wages up front.
So getting back to the 40 cents, you haven't got it yet. You've paid, say, 20 cents to an employee.
That
Yeah.
dollar we talked about,
Yeah.
where the government will give me the 40 cents, I need to pay that dollar to my employee
Yeah.
week on week on week, and then at the end of the month, I get the 40 cents.
So you had a
So,
pocket.
so without any income, in order to get the assistance, I need to have staff who will do nothing anyway,
Because the virus stops people coming
because
in.
it's all linked to me paying wages, and then they reimburse me for paying wages. But I actually don't need to pay wages because there's nothing to do.
This is crazy stuff.
So in the meantime, we found things for them to do so that we can keep them on. And in the previous one, the JobKeeper, the first round, I had to pay them wages to stay at home so that we could get JobKeeper. It's the stuff of bureaucratic.
Oh, Steph. I'm going to come in tomorrow.
I think it's Franz.
I'm going to
I think
bring
it's
in a
Franz
bottle of
Kafka.
whiskey.
Franz Kafka is the fellow that wrote this sort of stuff. And
Why is it that after we're in a wealthy, articulate, high communication society, why is it I'm talking to you in this, I don't want to run my own show down, but this dinky little show, it's only now, after months and months of this, that I understand the real life cash flow problems
Yeah.
of small businesses. What's wrong with our media? What's wrong with the people who should be telling these stories?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what's behind all of this and why. Because look, it's being administered by people who aren't suffering. So from the Prime Minister down in the bureaucratic system, none of those people feel threatened. They sit in their jobs. Taxpayers' money pays their wages regardless of whether they go to work, don't go to work, are sick, are stressed, take leave. It doesn't matter. They'll get paid regardless. So they can't think like a person who needs...
Sorry, I've got my pointing finger out. I'm going to interrupt if I may. They've never actually worked in the real world, a lot of these people.
Well, they haven't. And even if they have, they don't feel threatened. If I don't sell a coffee, I don't get a cent. And therefore I can't feed my family or pay
Right.
my mortgage or whatever
Right.
it is.
Before we bring ourselves to tears or the viewers, can I just bring to mind that we've got a council election in New South Wales, including here. Can you as a business vote in the Sydney council elections this year?
Apparently I can as a business, but I am also a resident here, so I can vote as
Alright.
an individual.
All right.
Yeah.
Does that mean you get 2 votes?
The business gets a vote and I get a vote. I guess I'll have to look into it. I'm not sure.
And so I don't want to disclose, and you may not have thought about it, but has the council given you any help in all of this? It's a $1 billion council. It pats itself on the back all the time.
I did in the first lockdown. council had a series of grants, which I have to say were, out of all of it, were relatively easy to get. They didn't require accounting assistance. They didn't have any cost input into them. They were smaller grants. I think one of them was 5,000 and the other one was not too far off that mark. But they were just a simple application, and they were meant to help, and they did. I have to say, it's the one simple thing that did happen.
Are they still doing that?
No. They did it in the first lockdown, and they haven't repeated it since. I imagine it was a very expensive exercise.
Yeah, okay. All right, well, I suppose foremost in your mind is surviving as a business rather than the niceties of what you would or would not want a future council to do for you. But assuming that you pull through, and I've asked you here because Chippendale loves you. We love your food, your wonderful fresh food, and assuming that somehow life can go on for you and your business and many of us in Chippendale, is there something you would like the council to deliver as part of the outcome of the coming elections in December?
Gosh, I'm a bit blindsided with that one because
that's all right. You've got a business to run.
No, it's not so much the business. I mean, we need help as I've outlined, but I don't know that a local council can provide that sort of help. But
do you have council costs in running your business?
There's rates, it's part of our lease, which aren't out of the ordinary or anything. And I mean, what would help a small business like ours, and we're a hospitality business, so it's a particularly hospitality thing, is if council made it easier in terms of dining. It's particularly difficult for us to have people dining outside. Council's very uncooperative in that regard, and historically Sydney City Council hasn't been cooperative. And I'm not sure what's behind that, but there's quite a history of it. And they do seem to be lightening up a bit, but our particular intersection where we are has other statutory authorities that play on it, so not just Sydney City Council. And
so you've got cooks inside the restaurant that you can manage, then you've got all these other cooks outside managing the footpaths on the road that
so that sort of thing. And then occasionally we get sort of inspectors and so on coming through and with ridiculous demands, and they don't see the place as what it is, as the focus of a neighbourhood and with a history and relationships and stuff, and and that sort of stuff is just bureaucracy that historically businesses have had to put up with, and are so infinitely ridiculous that you can't ridicule them because they'll punish you. And
all right, well, let's end on that low note, and fingers crossed that we can get some of those footpath rules and regulations simplified, and that your business prospers, and that people know that there's a really, really good coffee and a really, really good bowl of food at Cafe Guilia in Chippendale. And on that food hope note, let's wind up from 2008 in Chippendale. Thank you.
Thank you.
2008, the naked village in the city of Sydney, with 4,037 stories, and this has been one of them.
Lost in these uneducated blues.